Ramsdale House in Cerrito, West Virginia, where our voices actually came through the ghost box.
Oh,
Undeniably, our own voices were coming through it and answering our questions in our own voices. And I was like, okay.
There's a force in all of us that science knows nothing about, the force of fear.
welcome everybody to Induced Fear. We are back after a long hiatus. And for this episode, I have a man who has been in the industry for like 15 years, he told me, by the name of Austin Lawrence. How's it going, man?
Not bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Like I was saying before we started the show, you messaged me at perfect timing, right? When I was ready to come back and do this, I got your message and I was like, from what you said, I was like, this is a big hell yeah. This will be a good conversation.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I just gave your name, but if you want to let the people know who you are again and what you do, like what has been your 15 years?
My 15 years has been diving into the strange world of the paranormal. Right now, I'm getting back into making documentaries. So I just went back and filmed for the past week. I'm gonna have 3 more documentaries coming out here in the next couple months. So I'm really excited about that. And I also write, so I've got 2 books out. And yeah, just trying to get back into the groove, man.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, 15 years is a long time, man, to be in the paranormal. Like,
Yeah, and I mean
well,
that's really just as far as like investigating. I mean, I've been researching this stuff since I was probably like 5 years old. I was that really weird kid. So,
yeah, I
you
get
know.
you. I get you. And there was you talked about documentaries, and one of the things you told me in the message was uh, the Taylor Mill horror
Yes.
and things like that. Like, what was another one? Hell's Carnival that you wrote.
Yeah. Yeah, so Taylor Mill Horror is my first book that's based off of a case that I took on. The craziest case that I've been on and hopefully ever go on. And Hell's Carnival was just kind of my fiction based horror novel. Just to try to
Okay, dope.
do something a little different, you know.
That's cool. That's cool. And what's your origin story when it comes to what the first thing that happened to you that hooked you into the paranormal?
I really can't pinpoint a single thing. I mean, I grew up in a over 100-year-old farmhouse, supposedly on Native American land. So from a very young age, I started experiencing weird things, weird happenings. Whether it be for a while, I would see 2 full body apparitions come up to my room, just kind of acknowledge me and smile, and just kind of disappear. Things like that weren't uncommon for me.
Yeah.
So really, I was just kind of thrown into the paranormal, and it terrified me back then. And it was like, I got to figure out what this is, who these people are, what's going on. Am I going insane? Is this real? Is this stuff that other people experience? So that's really what kind of kickstarted my interest and research into the paranormal world.
Yeah, you didn't really choose the life, it chose you type deal.
Exactly, 100%.
Okay. Man, yeah, I can't imagine. I think I was like 7 when I had my first 7 or 8 when I had my first encounters, but I mean, 5, you're barely out of like toddler stage.
Right,
You know?
exactly. And everyone thinks you're just a kid with an imagination. So
Yeah.
everything's just like, no, it's just your imagination. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, I promise you. And it's it can be tough as a kid. That's why
No,
whenever
I mean,
someone asks
especially
me
because
like,
yeah,
I've had
you want
people
to.
ask me, what do I do when my kid says they see this? I'm like, well, first thing you do is you don't tell them it's just their imagination. Like, don't tell them that they're, imagine these things, have an actual conversation and try to figure it out. Like, it could be their imagination, but you don't want to isolate that child.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when they're coming to you scared about something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's interesting the fact that you said that they would just acknowledge you, like the apparitions that you would see.
Yeah,
It weren't there to like scare you, make noises or anything. It was just like, oh, he sees us, we see them,
right.
we see him, like type of deal.
Yeah, yeah, it was very, I mean, looking back now, I'd love to go back and re-experience it because it's
Yeah.
very comforting, but back then, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think I remember my one of my first moments is I was watching something on TV by
Mhm.
myself, and then I felt like a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around and I thought it was like my brother trying to mess with me.
Right.
And I looked behind the couch, looked all around, and then I was like, "Oh, there's nobody in here."
That's
Like
wild.
something did touch me.
Right.
And I think even then I was like, "All right, now I'm a little scared, so I'm gonna put on like a cartoon or something
Exactly.
to try to just calm down."
Yeah.
Uh, and where was it that you were growing up at the time? Or have you been in Ohio like all your life?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
okay,
I've been in Ohio my entire life.
okay, and it was just you think it was just because it was a 100-year-old like
I
home that it had just all that energy there, like
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know. People that I investigate with and people that know me always say that I'm a haunted person for whatever that means. And it's something that, when I first started getting into investigating, I started to kind of like realize, because we'd go to places and we'd catch a bunch of evidence. And there for a while, I stopped investigating totally because I was like, I'm doing something wrong. Like, I should not be getting all of this. Like,
yeah,
either I'm doing something wrong, my equipment's faulty, something. But then I started investigating with people who've been in the field for even longer than I have. And we'd go to locations that, they've been to multiple times and activity would pick up. And they'd be like, okay. So it seems like activity does follow me for whatever reason. So I'm not sure if it's the home or me or what it may be.
like you're just what I say, like you're sensitive to that kind of like that world.
Exactly. The people who have talked to me about it is they say it's like you're a lighthouse in the dark for you know spirits. If
Yeah,
that makes
that's a
sense.
cool way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me
Yeah,
sound somewhat cool as opposed to
yeah,
crazy. So.
yeah. And was it just those moments, like growing up? Was it just you acknowledging, spirits acknowledging you, or did anything else happen while growing up? Did it just continue? Were there like hiatuses between experiences?
Growing up, it really just kind of continued. To be completely honest, you talk about being touched. That used to happen to me all the time when I would sleep, and I wish I could find the camera because I got a really old cassette camera, and I set it up one night, and you could see someone crawling under my sheets, and that at that point, it didn't really terrify me. I was kind of excited because I'm like, I have something to show that I'm not
Yeah,
crazy,
you caught something. Yeah,
Exactly. So I mean, yeah, it really just continued forever, and it's one of those things where we always say we see like some of these paranormal teams like, oh yeah, we're quitting, we're done. And it's like I could never do that. Like
yeah,
no matter where I go, it's around me. So there's no quitting. So I might as well go out and try to find more answers.
yeah, yeah. Even if you were just to be just chilling at home, like something is gonna happen for you.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I said, we were just filming this past week and so when I went down to film, I left the location. I went to go check in my hotel and they canceled my reservation. So I was like, God, all right, where can I stay? So the owners of these locations let me stay in one of their locations and I get there about 8 in the morning and I lay down, I'm gonna go to sleep, and the whole place just goes haywire. I mean, there's stuff being thrown, there's voices, there's footsteps, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah,
So I texted one of the people who work there after about like 30 minutes of me just trying to plead, like, can you let me sleep? And I asked him, like, what's going on? Like, how can is there anything I can do to appease them? Is there, and they basically said, no, let me come over. So they came over and they were like, holy crap, we've like, this is like not very common, especially for 8 in the morning.
yeah,
it was just it was just insane. And by the time we filmed there and we left, they couldn't believe how active and insane that place was. Um, so it's just one of those things like you can't, or at least I can't escape it. It's a
yeah,
constant. But when I go into these locations that have this activity already, it seems like it just intensifies.
yeah. You like jumpstart. the
Right,
energy in that area.
right.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I don't know how I would be if that happened with me. Anytime I investigate, it's like a slow burn and
Mhm.
something like rarely happens for like. But for you, if you just step into a place and it's just like, all right, he's here, so we.
Yeah, that's really how it seems, and, this time around, I brought, 2 people with me that I didn't know, to help out film, and one of the people was a complete non-believer, so I was like, "This is perfect." Didn't believe in the paranormal, his religion didn't allow him to believe in ghosts and stuff like that, um,
Okay.
so by the last day, he was in the room with all the lights on and wouldn't go anywhere with the lights out because he was so terrified, and it was interesting watching him from the first day to the last day, and, like, the first few days, he was like, "Okay, I can't explain that, but maybe there's an explanation," but the last thing that
Yeah,
happened to him, he was like, "There literally is no explanation, and that scares the hell out of me."
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, it's always interesting when you see that, like, that moment where, because I mean, it happens to any one of us who has our first experience that you can't explain. It's just, it
Right.
kind of breaks your brain a little bit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I not to sound rude, but it was funny to watch. It was funny to watch him
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
there,
no,
and you
I
could
get
just
it.
see his brain going and going and going, and he
Yeah,
was like, "I don't understand how to explain that." I was like, "Dude, look, you're not gonna explain an object getting thrown across the room by anything other than it was paranormal. Like, that's it.
yeah,
So you just gotta accept that and move on, and that's all you can do. Otherwise, you're gonna sit there for months and months and beat yourself up over it, you know?"
yeah. Until the next thing happens, and then you can't explain that one, and then you're just, like, racking your brain.
Right.
You're making yourself go more crazy trying to figure out what actually is going on, which after, you know, many years of people investigating the paranormal, there hasn't been any straight answer, you
No,
know?
absolutely not.
So so you're not gonna figure it out within that night that you have your experience.
Exactly, it's constantly chasing the dragons, what I always say. You're constantly trying
Yeah,
to find those answers, and you leave with more questions every single time. Like, there really are no answers other than, "Hey,
yeah,
this exists."
yeah, yeah, exactly. What was the first, like your first, when you knew, "Hey, I could go out and do these types of investigations?" Was it after watching, like, Ghost Hunters or whatever?
Yeah, it's funny because, yeah, it was actually ghost hunters, and, I actually used to talk to Grant back in the day, and,
Oh, cool.
we would talk back and forth, and, that's when I realized, like, "Hey, there's people who do these things." Like,
Yeah,
before I thought it was like just like Ed and Lorraine and people like that who are like out there doing this stuff. I'm like, there's quote unquote normal people out there who do this stuff.
yeah,
Okay. So I remember they had their live stream at Waverly Hills, and I told my buddy, I was like, we're going. And that was the first place we ended up going, was Waverly Hills. And so
oh,
yeah,
wow,
it's they were definitely a huge inspiration is like getting into
yeah,
the field and letting me know like, hey, you can do this.
yeah. Well, especially because their deal was, like, they're plumbers by day, and then they
Right,
go and do this at night
right,
on their own time type deal, um, which is like all of us. We have, like, a normal job and then
exactly.
go and do this on the side. So that was your first place,
Yep,
Waverly
Waverly.
Hills?
Yep.
Wow, what a place to, like, jump into, like, right off the bat.
I know it was amazing, and the weird thing for people who haven't been to Waverly, and even like before I went there, I was like, this is going to be terrifying. But
Yeah,
Waverly, when you walk in, it is the most comfortable. You feel like you're at home the entire time, which is so weird to say.
yeah,
But if you go, you'll experience it, and you just feel like you are in a loving home. It's wild. I love that place.
yeah. Because that's a lot of people's, like, bucket list, like,
Right.
place to, like, go. So I just think that's cool that that was, like, your you just jumped right in.
Oh yeah.
Well, what had happened for you guys when you guys went there?
um, so when we first went, we oh man, this was a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember everything that happened. Um, the the things that I definitely remember happening was one, we saw the creeper, which was really cool. Um, I was actually there. So there was this paranormal team that was there, um, and they were your stereotypical paranormal team. And so we decided to go with them because we're brand new. We're like, hey, maybe we can pick something up, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and so we had split up, and it was me and one guy, and my buddy and his dad and another guy split off, and we were going opposite directions. And me and this guy were walking down the open breezeway area, and we both stopped dead in our tracks, and we saw this thing sitting there on its all fours, kind of like peeking out behind this little pillar, and we're just like, "What the hell is that?" And so
Yeah.
I started going towards it, and it just darts off. The next thing I know, we hear these loud footsteps behind us, and it's the rest of the crew running, and they're like, "You won't believe what the hell we just saw." And I'm just like, "Yeah, okay. I guarantee
Yeah.
you I can top whatever you just saw." Like, "What'd you see?" And they're like, "We saw the creeper crawling on the ceiling, and it was running towards you. Did you guys see it?" And I was like, "Holy crap! That totally
Yeah.
validates what we just saw." Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, that was really cool. And the other thing that I remember was we were in the body chute, and we saw this ball of light come up the body chute, and don't know how to explain it. And it was funny because we stayed there and we were just in amazement. And we looked back, and one of the guys from the paranormal team had ran out the door, ran out the building, and he refused to come back. So it was like, really, guy? Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Waverly is an amazing place. It's one place I definitely recommend people check out.
Yeah, that would be one of my places that I would like to go. I've only done a few places here in Colorado.
Hmm.
An old jailhouse, like the basement of like a comic book and oddities shop.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I live right next door to a cemetery. So
Okay, that's awesome.
uh yeah, so I mean but that would be one of the places that I would like to go and like check out.
Right.
Maybe not even to like do an investigation the first time, maybe just walk through it and kind of
Yeah,
feel everything. For
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely that's places that like do tours and stuff like that. I always say, dude, just go during the daytime and just experience the place because there's
Yeah.
so much history, there's so much everything in there. You can just feel it, you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's just an honor to be in some of these places, you know.
Yeah, like what you said, especially with the history on
Yeah.
some of them. I mean, that's why when I went to the jailhouse, that was like I think it was almost 100 years old. This jailhouse,
Hmm.
um, and from the time when this first town first started in Colorado, in Cripple Creek, Colorado, and they jailed everybody from men, women, and children in there. So
Right. Yep.
that's how you know it was like way back then when they were just like arresting kids because they were being kids. Uh,
Exactly.
but I want to ask, what is it that because everybody has kind of their own styles when it comes to investigating. You have people who kind of do what they see on TV,
Hmm.
but then you have somebody like you who has been in it for years. Uh, how have your styles changed from your methods changed from when you started till now?
Yeah. So it's definitely changed by less equipment. I started taking a lot less equipment than I did previously, and I I'm good friends with Brandon Albus, who's now doing Haunted Discoveries, formerly Ghost Hunters, and I talk to him a lot because they do absolutely insane stuff. They're very scientific. They work with the only man to simultaneously get two PhDs at the same time. Um, so they're using crazy stuff to study like photon events, like these bursts of lights that we can't see with our own eyes, with these special cameras that correlate to paranormal activity,
Yeah,
and just all kinds of insane stuff. So I've really been, talking to him and trying to get new methods. I'm trying to use Tesla coils to transmit questions through EMF as opposed to asking them out loud.
yeah,
Um, stuff like that that has more of a scientific base as opposed to, your gadgets you can buy online that are ghost hunting equipment. you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. Or apps that you can download, whatever else to
exactly.
things go. Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool. I've seen somebody Was it on Ghost Adventures? Did they try Tesla coils? Was it also Ghost Hunters that did that?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I thought they used not to do what you had suggested. They
Yeah.
just used it to kind of amplify the energy
Oh,
within
okay,
there.
yeah, like a Jacob's ladder. They
Yeah,
use
yeah,
that a lot too.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, because I've had my method is always the less the better. You know, you get
Exactly.
little things like I do bring a REM pod,
Mhm.
things like that. Those little cat toys that can always be
Yep.
knocked around, but they work pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
and then a spirit box, uh,
Right.
which at first I was very skeptical of when I first started, but as you learn that it's like rapidly shooting through uh, like signals, like there's no way one station is gonna talk for like 3 syllables.
Exactly. Yeah, I was always really skeptical of those until one investigation we did probably like 5 or 6 years ago at the Ramsdale House in Cerrito, West Virginia, where our voices actually came through the ghost box.
Oh,
Undeniably, our own voices were coming through it and answering our questions in our own voices. And I was like, okay.
I got like that probably broke your brain for a second, right? Like you're
Oh,
like, well,
absolutely.
how
I
does this
still
even
don't
happen?
exactly. Yeah, I still don't completely get it because I haven't been on the radio, so you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. The only thing that popped into my head when you said that was like it could be what is it? Those residual hauntings where they're like an imprint in something, so your
Yep.
energy was just imprinted as soon as you stepped in, kind of deal.
Yeah, it's so it's funny you mention that because one of the places that I investigated yesterday or the day before, I can't remember. My days are a blur. But they have a room where they believe that happens, and they had a woman in there like a year ago who was pacing around and like having a panic attack, and they still hear it to this day. And when I was there, probably 2 or 3 weeks back, I saw a man walk out of that room and down the hallway, and I'm like, oh, okay, I think it's probably one of the workers. Then about 5 seconds later, it happens again, and I'm like, okay, I'm going crazy. Then one
Yeah,
of the workers ended up coming upstairs and standing right next to me, and it did it again. And she was like, "Did you see that man?" And it happened 3 times within a minute. And I'm like, "This stuff doesn't happen." And that's when
yeah,
they told me they thought it was some sort of like time slip or maybe some sort of, like you said, imprinting. For some reason, energy can be imprinted in this
yeah,
room in this building, and it's a crazy thought. And like you said, it changes the way you think when you go out and investigate. Like, could this be an imprint even from myself?
yeah,
And the first location that we filmed at, I was told that there was an imprint from one of the owners there. And I'd been there like 7 years ago and just went back. And I didn't really believe that until I went there and I came upstairs and I heard one of the owners talking clear as day, and no one was there. And I'm like, how is this happening if this man's still
yeah,
alive and like 30 miles away? you know?
yeah, yeah.
So
That's
it's
pretty
it's it's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, because I know there are hauntings of like a residual haunting of
Mhm.
certain events. Like what's one of them? I know there's one about somebody shooting another person, and at a certain time
Yep.
during the day, you will hear like the pop of the gun
Yep.
at that same exact time that it happened back then.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about. I can't think of it, but that was a
Yeah,
very famous one.
yeah. See, that's why I was like, I knew it because I know I've heard it before. But yeah,
Yeah.
and like plenty of places where people just see some like what you had something happen over and over. Like it was
Right.
just that's what that worker or whatever whoever it was that you saw did all the time to the point where
Exactly.
it's stuck on this like repeated loop.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and how do you
crazy.
like when you see that? Do you automatically wait to see if it happens again to kind of determine whether it's a residual haunting, or do you ask questions immediately to determine if it's intelligent or not?
So in that situation, there was a group doing a tour there. So I just stood there, then I didn't want to interact at all because I didn't want to freak out the group that was in the room.
Okay,
So I'm
yeah.
like, you know what? This isn't my tour, and I don't want to freak these people out. So I had someone else witness it, and okay.
Yeah.
Since then, a couple of the workers have been sitting up there like every single day for hours on end trying to see it again, and no one has seen it since.
Oh, wow.
So maybe it could be something that, like you said, happens on a certain day of the year, and I was
Yeah.
just lucky enough to be there. But yeah, if that's something I experienced firsthand, I'm on investigation. Then yeah, you want to get to trying to start ask questions. Maybe go into where it moves to and seeing if you can communicate somehow.
Yeah. And when you go into these, because you are you said it was a friend described you as a lighthouse, right, to the
Right,
spirits.
right.
Um, when you step into a location, do you automatically feel like that surge of something going on?
Um, Not automatically, no. It tends to be something like so, especially the past couple days. You know, it's like you can feel the environment completely change, and all my hairs will stand up, and it's like I'm walking through a static electrical field.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just like the whole area just kind of charges up, and I can really feel that. I mean, before then, yeah, I can get a sense of certain rooms, um, as far as like the vibe of it, right? Like if
Yeah.
something sad or something angry or whatever. But as far as like feeling something tangible, if you will, in that location, it happens on its own time, and once it does, I pick up on it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Have you ever tried like grounding yourself before or when you go into a location?
No, actually, I haven't. Everyone tells me that I should, especially afterwards,
Yeah.
but I just haven't because I'm like, why change what's working right now?
Yeah.
Um,
I just thought of that in the sense when you said that when you feel the environment change, you feel that like everything, like your hair stand up on end.
oh yeah,
I would wonder what would happen if you did ground yourself. Would that like amplify
that's a good
everything
question.
or
That's something I might have to try out, honestly.
yeah, 'cause I think that would be cool. I mean, like I'm not sensitive to anything in environment, really. My fiance, she is. She doesn't
Okay,
like to she doesn't like to acknowledge it in any way because it scares her.
right, right.
But but yeah, whenever we go into a place, I definitely like will pay attention to her
Hmm.
and see how she's reacting. But yeah, I might have to do that with her. I'll be like, take off your shoes, ground yourself. Outside.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. Yeah, that's cool. It's always something, it's something that I've had for a long time, but always didn't allow myself to believe it because it just kind
Yeah.
of seems like you might be schizophrenic, like,
Yeah.
rationally.
Yeah.
Um, but it's been confirmed to me so many times, and so many people have talked to me about it. So now it's become more of a tool than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you I would imagine you probably like in the beginning, like again when you were 5 and
Hmm.
these things are happening, you're like, I don't want none of this to happen. It freaks me out.
Right.
And then as you get older, you know how to use it, you know how to uh, accept it in your way,
Yes.
you know. What was the moment when you were like, okay, this isn't so bad. I I've been around it long enough to where it isn't bothering me anymore.
That is a good question. I don't know. I think it'd probably been, after I really started investigating a lot and trying to figure out what's going on at some point, it just became commonplace.
Yeah,
Especially like I tell people when you go to Waverly Hills, it's not uncommon to hear a full on conversation and no one's there. I mean, it's really not. And so once you start getting into these places more and more and more, and you're hearing and experiencing these things, I always tell everyone like when something crazy happens, I always think, "Oh my god, it could be a person." But once you realize it's not like a human in there, you're like, oh, "Okay, it's
yeah,
just something paranormal, thank God." And you accept it then, and
yeah,
eventually you realize that humans are a lot scarier than the paranormal.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want to be in an abandoned location and then all of a sudden it's like you have somebody you don't know that is just now
Right.
wandering around this place.
Exactly. That's the
Yeah.
most terrifying thing when it comes to investigating because there's so many times you have stuff happen. You're like, that 100% has to be a person,
Yeah.
but it's not. you know.
Yeah, because I mean, in a sense, a person can probably do more damage than any spirit can do anyway. So, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, not like psyche in your psyche. I think a spirit will probably do more to, like,
True.
like we said, break your brain. like,
Right.
uh, but yeah. What was I gonna ask? Oh, about your craziest experience that you had wrote about the Taylor Mills.
Oh yeah. The craziest case. That that was a case that just got thrown on us. So we had a YouTube channel. We were doing pretty decently well, and we wanted to take it up a notch. So we were like, okay, where's hot? And then what was hot at the time was Bobby Mackey's. So we're like, all right, let's go to Bobby Mackey's and investigate. So we did, and we got offered up this home to stay in. We're like, hell yeah, we'll take a house to stay in, like
Yeah,
no doubt. And they said, it's supposedly haunted. And we look it up, it's like this brand new house. I'm like, okay, we've heard this story 100 times before, and we decided to go stay there. So we're not expecting anything. And we get there and we're walking around the home, and I walk into what I later found out was the daughter's room of the guy who owned it. They had abandoned the house, but it was his daughter's room. And I walk in, and a woman says hello to me, and it's loud enough that everyone hears it. And I'm like, oh God, okay, something's going on here. So we
yeah,
start investigating, and we start realizing that like this is whatever's here is definitely not good. Um, it talks about killing us, me in specific. It didn't like me. It wanted me dead.
oh, that's
I
real
got
cool.
scratched. Yeah, I mean, it was really intense. And we're like,
Yeah,
after we left, we're like, we're no reason to come back here. We're done with this place. So a couple weeks later, we're like, we're going back for 2 weeks.
yeah,
so we went back, and it was the worst time of my life. I mean, you're talking about
wow,
24/7 poltergeist activity. You're talking about paranormal earthquakes. You're talking about physical attacks. I mean, it took me so long to put the book out because the claims, I call them claims, but they're not really claims because I experienced them. But what happened to me inside that home, if you would have told me that happened to you, I would think that you're crazy. These are things that we've read about like with the Amityville horror and stuff like this, where you have these things that happen. You're like, okay, you had me until that point. That can't happen. Like,
yeah,
there's no way. But I experienced it firsthand, and so I sat there and I wrote and like deleted this book 15 times because I'm like, I don't want people to think that I'm crazy. I don't want to destroy me in the paranormal field. But this happened, and it was really
yeah,
kind of a battle on whether or not I should put it out. And eventually I was like, you know what? Someone else somewhere out there is probably going through the same things, thinking the same thing, and they've got nowhere to turn or they don't want to come out about it. I was like, so I gotta put this out just in case it falls in one of their laps.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the good thing when it comes to sharing your experiences is that it's in some way it's going to let the person who thinks they're crazy,
Right.
change their mind and say, "Okay, this might have really happened to me. I'm not crazy."
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's it was an interesting thing, especially when I was talking to the owner. I asked him, I was like, was there a point that you thought you were crazy? He's like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, so at what point did you realize you weren't? And did you ever wish that you were, right? Like, did
Yeah,
you ever wish you were crazy and this stuff wasn't actually happening? He was like, at some point when stuff starts flying around, you realize you're not crazy. And there's no denying that. And he
yeah,
was like, I kind of wish I was, but unfortunately, you know,
yeah. It happened.
this stuff happens,
Yeah, yeah. That must have been like cathartic in a way for you as well, especially
Yeah,
since you said it was a very intense, like something that really affected you
absolutely.
afterwards, anyways. So
Yeah, it was good to get it out there and kind of just like because it was something that I wouldn't even talk to friends about or anything because I'm like everyone thinks gonna think I'm crazy. So once I
yeah,
put it out there, it's like okay, it's out there. Like everyone
yeah,
knows now. So whoever wants to judge is already judged, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine like going into a location that you, in your head, you were thinking like, okay, this is the kind of like the same run of the mill story we get for
Hmm.
something being like haunted, and then for just things to threaten you, threaten your life,
Right.
and
Yeah,
it
and
just flips it on you.
it's interesting because the homeowner, who was a bodybuilder, big guy, he was on his deathbed when he was inside the home. And once he got out of the hospital, he's quickly recovered and he came back in the house and he had to go back to the hospital. And so
Yeah,
eventually they moved out of the house and he was perfectly fine. And he swears on his life that what was in that home was what was killing him.
yeah. I mean, I can believe that. They're like, if you live too close to a like one of those power stations, that has all
Yeah,
of the relays, that's going to affect you in a certain way. So I
that is
imagine
true.
being in a place with high energy, high negative energy like that is going to definitely like take a toll on you.
Right. Yeah, and it definitely did. It definitely did on them.
Yeah. And how long were you there?
Total, we were there for about 2 weeks.
Okay. Plus the other 2 weeks that you went back to it,
No,
or
no, that's
no?
that's all together. We're there for about
Oh,
two
okay.
weeks from the first
Okay.
and second trip combined.
Do you ever regret going back?
No. There for a while I did. It
Mhm.
affected me pretty bad, and I definitely had some things that followed me after that. And it got to a point where if I went over to, let's say, your house and I stayed the next night you'd be calling me and saying, "What the hell did you do to my house?" And it was all the same type of activity. And so I
Yeah.
spent about a year and a half in isolation, didn't talk to, see any of my friends or anything, and just stayed in my room because I didn't want to affect anyone.
Yeah, you wanted to kinda let it
So
purge out.
exactly. So during
Yeah.
that time, yeah, I definitely regretted it. But looking back now, I don't at all. I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I
Yeah.
experienced that.
Well, because you learn no matter how negative an experience, you're gonna learn from it anyways.
Right. Yeah. And it's good for me to also experience the things that I didn't think were possible. So now I can have more of an open mind when I go
Yeah.
into other places.
Yeah, if so like, when you go into a place and somebody says, "Well, I was, like, picked up and kinda pushed to the side." It's like, "Okay, well, I've experienced pretty heavy things, so
Right.
I'm gonna take in what you say." I mean, I've had people come on the show and say, "I know this is crazy. I know you're thinking I'm crazy right
Hmm.
now." And I'm like, "No, I'm just letting you talk it out, man.
Right.
And
Right.
don't I'm don't put any, preconceived notion on what I'm thinking." And I was like, "Just I'm letting you talk it out, let it out, and say what you experienced."
Yeah, we say that all the time. Like, don't think I'm crazy. Like, even talking amongst each other, I'm like, dude, really? Like, we've experienced the same things. Don't. Why are you saying that? It's just like a
Yeah.
habit because we still have kind of that fear in the back of our minds. That we're gonna get
Oh, yeah.
judged for talking about what we experienced, even if we experienced it with the person we're talking to.
Yep. Yeah. Was your family kind of were they a family that kind of spoke about these things, or
No, no,
no,
no.
not at all?
Yeah, they were very not too pleased when I started getting into it, but eventually they're like, "All right, we're not gonna stop you.
Yeah.
Go for it."
Yeah, I think my mom used to say, like, Just stop with the devil stuff." That's what she
Yeah.
would say all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's good that they kind of were like, "Alright, we know you're not like a devil worshiper or something,
Right,
you know?"
exactly, exactly. You're just trying to talk to demons. Different
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. You're trying to talk to them and then tell them, "Just get out of here."
Right.
Uh, I mean, I always tell people as well, because I know, like, let's say if you bring somebody who isn't a believer
Mhm,
in these things like you have,
mhm.
um, I always try to remind them, like, "Hey, you got both, like, this kind of spiritual energy and living energy. Like,
Right.
you will always overpower whatever negativity, even if it's gonna affect
Mhm.
you in a certain way, you can always overpower it in that
Right.
sense."
Yeah,
Mm,
that's insanely true. And, yeah, I think that's part of the reason why bringing in non-believers is a bad idea. It's like the 3rd or 4th time I've done it,
Yeah.
and it's never ended well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I brought in our last investigation, at the old jail, uh, in the mountains of Colorado here. Uh,
Mhm.
Me and my fiance have done an investigation before together, and then we brought on her sister and her sister's boyfriend. And
Okay.
he's a photographer out here in Colorado, and he was like, "Yeah, I really want to do this. I'll shoot it. Like I'll shoot it and I'll record it all
Right.
and all the stuff." And then once he heard something say his name
Mhm.
through like the spirit box, he was like, "Okay, now I'm really freaking out. I didn't think
Yeah.
anything was gonna happen."
Yep.
Like it's always after that. Now he's like, "I want to do it again," and he's even telling his friends like, "My friends wanna come with us on the next one if you ever find another one." Like,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah. So now he has a little bit of the bug. Like,
Right.
you go,
Yeah, once you get that first question, like, as
yeah,
soon as you realize it's real, and then you get that first question, you're like, "How does what?" Then it's on. Like,
yeah. I
you
kind of
just
felt
keep
bad.
going.
I kind of felt bad in a way because that was the first time that I had a ton of things going on
Mhm.
in a location. I mean, a ton in a sense of multiple things happening, over like 4 hours or 6 hours,
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there were things, moving stuff. We had a REM pod go off in one of the cells. We just left it by itself, nothing
Mhm.
around it. It wasn't beeping beforehand. And
Right.
as soon as we were like, all right, we're gonna leave, it started going crazy in that cell by itself.
Huh.
Um, we had a voice come through when we were saying we're gonna leave. Something told us to stay here. And it
Mhm.
just said, stay here. Um, yeah, and there was just all kinds of different things that happened for them on their
That's
first real
awesome.
investigation. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely how it
and
was with the 2 that I brought along. At first, I kinda felt a little bit bad, and then I was like, "Nah, this is just great. This is gold," you know?
yeah, yeah, because now they have an experience that they can. You always have those types of nights when you're hanging out with buddies and you're like, "Did I ever tell you guys that I saw a ghost?" Or like,
Right, right. That's why I told him I was because he kept thinking about run this over like everything's happened. I was like, dude, 15 years from now, you're gonna be doing the same thing in your bed. Like, I promise you, it's gonna pop
yeah,
in your head. Like, how did that? And that's the reason why I went back to the first place that we filmed at was because of something that happened to me 6.5 years ago, and it
yeah,
still bugs me. And I'm like, I got to go back. And I went back, and did I get an answer? Hell no.
no. What was it?
um, So it's funny because I talked to the owner, asked if he remembered it, and he was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And he told it to the T. And what had happened was we were we were getting ready. He was getting ready to leave, and we heard this loud crash, and we searched the entire place thinking that someone broke in, and there was no one there. And we end up finding this painting that had flown off the wall. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. And I'm like, yeah, but it, it could have broke. There was a wire in the back. It's like the wire could have broke, although it looked like it was cleanly cut. I was like, no big deal. But the painting had fallen and had fallen on top of a clock. And it was an old antique clock that he had brought over from a church that hadn't worked because it wasn't the weights inside weren't balanced. So it hadn't worked since he moved it from the church. So it laid it on the clock and started the clock. I was like, it's pretty weird. It was 7 p.m. when this happened, and the clock was correct to the exact second. And I'm like, okay, so many things had to happen at such a precise time
Yeah,
for all of that to happen. I can't explain it. Like I have no idea.
yeah.
It
Because like
has
you
bugged
said,
me for
everything
over
had to
six
happen.
years.
Yeah, everything had to happen precisely in like a certain order, I guess.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And why I was there when it happened, I don't know. Like why was I the lucky one to experience that? Because he brought that clock over like months ago. So it'd been sitting there for months, stopped at 7 o'clock.
yeah,
Why me? Why then? Why I don't know. It just like I said, you think you have an answer, you get 100 questions. you know?
yeah. That's one of the what is it? A gift and a curse when doing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you want those questions. You want to, at, on some level, you don't want to know exactly
Right.
going on because then it kind of, I don't know if it's in other words, like take the fun out of it. You
Yeah.
know, you like to kind of like look through these things and ask more questions. So if you do get 100% the answer, it's going to be like, well, I guess I know how this all works.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like some of the people who are in cryptid zoology, they say like,
Yeah,
if we ever find Bigfoot, what are we gonna do?
yeah,
We're out of work. Like, what do we
yeah,
do?
yeah,
So yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
yeah. That's true. That's true. What do you like when it comes to speaking of cryptozoology? Since your realm is basically within the paranormal, like spiritual
Hmm.
aspect, right?
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on cryptids and Bigfoot?
Yeah. So when I first started investigating, I actually started investigating with this guy that I met through playing music, and he lived in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Home of the
Okay.
Mothman.
Yeah.
And one of his family members was one of the original people to report the Mothman. So I never really like back when I was a little kid, I used to love that whole genre of the paranormal. And I kind of fell out of it when I got into ghosts and all this stuff. Then I got it kind of brought back into it, and I mean, I think that anything out there could exist. Um, and the thing that always gets me is that you look at like Bigfoot and stuff like that, and this is in Native American lore. And to me, there is no one who has ever known or been as connected with the earth or nature than the Native Americans.
Yeah.
So if they say that these things exist, who are we to say that they don't? You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's a good possibility now, whether or not some of these are government experiments or you know tulpas or who knows what. I don't know. But I would never doubt the existence of any of them really.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be crazy? Because I know there are instances of like the forest, like being
Mhm.
haunted. I mean, because if
Yeah.
energy can be in a building, it could be out in just a normal area
Oh,
as
absolutely.
well. Like, wouldn't it be crazy if you were investigating like somewhere in the woods and you saw what appeared to be like this Bigfoot creature, but it was the spirit of one, like it was the
Right.
ghost of one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's something that we've talked about. That or it being like a time slip or something like that. Maybe they existed,
Yeah.
years before man. But one of the first experiences I had with something like that was actually at the place where the whole clock incident happened.
Oh,
I had
really?
seen a gnome in the basement of this jail, and I didn't want to say it, but I eventually said it, and my partner made fun of me for the next 4 days that we were there,
Yeah.
until the owner came back, and we told him up front we don't want to know any of the claims. We want you to come back and tell us the claims on the last day, so we can see if we can line up anything. And when he came back, he right where I saw it, he kind of like half-heartedly was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, someone has a picture of a gnome in here that they took," and it was this guy who was filming there, and he caught a video of a gnome, and so when I went back, everyone's seen these things now. Literally, all the
Yeah.
workers have seen it, and there's so many reports of it, and I mean, it's
And it was just gonna be something you were just gonna brush off.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's no way that these things exist. Like that,
Yeah.
that can't be real. But it goes back to Native Americans and the oh, I forget, always
The
forget how
little
to say it, like
people.
the Pukwudgie
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the little people and
Puckwudgie.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. So who am I to deny the existence of things like Bigfoot, especially when you got places like the Smoky Mountains where we've like explored like 5% of them, and
Yeah.
that's it. You know.
Well, anybody who travels, I mean, you travel for what you do, like,
Hmm.
you see how vast, like, everything
Oh yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
once you
wild,
get outside of the cities, like, it's pretty big. It's pretty big
right?
out there.
Yeah, and it's just crazy to think that we've explored so little of the place that we've lived for so long, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's just that's why, like you, it's like, I can't say this thing 100% doesn't exist,
Hmm.
because if I can go and say, "Yeah, I had, like, a ghost in my room. I've had an experience with like a doppelganger type thing,
Mhm.
but then to turn around and go, nah, that big giant hairy thing in the woods. Yeah,
Right.
no, that's not.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's crazy how so many people draw lines. And in Point Pleasant, it's funny because we talked to the guy who runs a Mothman museum,
yeah,
and we were there to investigate the Low Hotel, which is right across the street. And we asked him like, "Do you think that place is haunted?" He was like, "You guys are ghost hunters?" We're like, "Yeah." He's like, "You guys are stupid. I can't believe you guys believe in ghosts." He was like, "But let me tell you about the Mothman and how the FBI
yeah,
flies and follows me home in a Black Hawk helicopter." I'm
yeah,
like, "Wait a second,
yeah,
what?" I don't get it.
yeah, yeah. That's always funny. I always go on whenever I'm talking to my fiance. I'm like, I don't understand how people like are just so definitively will say something like this doesn't exist, and then they'll turn around and like what you just said is like,
Right.
well, the Mothman came and Men in Black came
Yeah.
around asking everybody questions and all this other stuff, and I'm like, why? Why? How is it? What in what part in your head does it like do you draw that line and say like, well, what you're talking about is a little crazy. I'm talking about something real here.
Right.
Like, that's weird. People are weird sometimes.
Yes, they are. It's entertainment, though.
Well, what do you so that the people can like know what you're up to? What is it that you're doing right now that you've been filming?
Yeah,
And you don't
so
have to give everything all away. You can like kind of leave it vague if you want as well.
oh, no, right now I'm just working on I just got home from filming the 3 documentaries, so I'm working on that right now, and that's the main goal, and, possibly going to some more locations and, filming a couple more, but I really wanna kinda get these done first, hopefully, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, those I mean, is there one thing that you still have on your bucket list, a place that you would want to investigate that you would like to go to?
1,000,000% yes, for the longest time since I was since Modern Warfare 2.
Okay.
Chernobyl.
Yeah. That's what
I've
you
always wanted to go there. I've always wanted to investigate there. I will before I die.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, people go there all the time now. So it's
Yeah.
like you can definitely imagine what you could catch there. That would be insane.
Yeah, because I mean, that whole place is charged, you know,
Yeah.
like literally.
Yeah, literally charged.
So, yeah, I can't imagine. I think you could probably get some pretty wild stuff there.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And is there any place where you're at in like in Ohio like that you would want to investigate or had kind of you have you tackled what you wanted to there?
So there's one place I'd love to tackle but still can't. There's an old prison slash mental institution that's here. But they won't let anyone buy it. It's been shut down for like 20 years now. And I would
No.
die to get in there because I know people who work there and they would actually have to move prisoners' cells because they were so terrified of the ghosts in their cell. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
I would
believe
love
that.
to get in there. But there's the one place I love going is Prospect Place here in Ohio. It's by far my favorite place. I've been there like I'm coming up on 50 times now. And
Really?
that's a place that I will always, always, always go to. And I'm actually trying to plan a trip back now. So that's a
What's the
place I
story
just
there?
can't get enough of. So Prospect Place is built by um, George Adams, who moved from New York to Ohio to build a home to be part of the Underground Railroad. And so he built this home and then he built basically an entire town around it so that he could have the waterways so escaped slaves could take canoes. And he would have tens of thousands of sheep so that he could supply wool to the Union Army. And it's just amazing all the stuff that he did. And for some reason, this is easily one of the top 5 most haunted places, I believe, in the United States. Um, it's insane, and you can literally experience anything and everything there, and it seems like it's constantly changing. It was used as
Yeah.
a morgue at one point for a train crash. And you know, the really crazy thing about it is that George Adams wife. His first wife died, but his second wife is on record writing letters reporting seeing his first wife in this home after they moved in.
That's cool.
So we have reports of hauntings going back,
Yeah,
all the way then. So it's
yeah,
it's just wild.
yeah. That's super cool. I mean, to have those records, the fact that she was writing letters about
Right.
seeing the first wife, that's cool. Yeah, I can see why you would probably. I mean, is it far from you
It's
where
about
you're
an
at
hour and a
now?
half, so it's not too
Oh, not
far at
too bad.
all.
Yeah,
No.
no, not too bad. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, we drove through Ohio not too long ago. We
Oh,
just kind of
really?
drove. Yeah, we drove through cross country basically there to New
That's
York
awesome.
back. Um, Made a few stops there, but there are still more that we wanted to check out in Ohio, so we
Oh,
might
yeah.
go back. You know?
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, man.
There's some cool places around here. Of course, you
Yeah,
got
same.
Mansfield,
If
which
you ever
is
make your way, if you ever make your way out to Colorado, there's a few that I live like really close by. Fairmount
I've wanted to
Cemetery.
for a long time.
Yeah,
Colorado's beautiful.
Is is like this. It's a nice park
Mhm.
near downtown, but it used to be a cemetery. Oh no,
Oh,
not
okay.
Fairmount. I'm saying Fairmount. Cheeseman Park. Um, uh, it's this big park. Used to be a cemetery where they just put everybody that
Mhm.
passed, and then they wanted to turn it into a park, and they hired some guy to move the bodies. Some of the bodies got moved to the cemetery that I live next to, which is Fairmount Cemetery.
Okay.
Um, um, so it's weird that I used to live next to the park, and then now I live next to the
Right.
cemetery where the bodies moved. Um,
Then
but
you find
that
out you've
person,
been dead this whole time.
yeah, yeah, that was me. It was me at the park. But the guy, like, because he was getting paid per casket or whatever, he
Mhm.
started to like dismember the bodies and put them
Oh my god.
into different things. Uh, and even then, as soon as he started doing that, there's reports of people having weird things happen while
Mhm.
they were like moving the bodies, and there are still 2,000 bodies buried underneath the park there.
Wow.
Like they just
That's
kind of went
insane.
over it. So when you go to that park, you definitely like they have instances of like just a woman walking through the park,
Mhm.
kind of wailing. Um, what do they call this guy named Slackjaw because like he had gotten jumped or whatever, so his jaw is like
Oh,
slacked,
okay.
and people
Yeah.
see him. But yeah, there's like that's one of the places that is real like a one of the bigger haunted places in Colorado because it's a uh, big park.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you ever come to Colorado, I got a bunch of places for you guys.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
uh, but before we close out and everything, if you want to let the people know where they can find you, the books that you have out that they can get, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you can pick those up on Amazon, Taylor Moore Horror and Hell's Carnival. Other than that, I don't do a lot of social media. I'm just kinda here, so
That's
be on the
smart.
lookout for some, documentaries coming. Somehow
Yeah.
you'll
What
find
do you
them.
still have your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I do have YouTube Strangely Haunted. We've only thrown up 2, 3 videos, and then I decided I'm gonna go out and do these, feature length documentaries and start doing that as
Okay.
opposed to the YouTube content, because a lot of these places are historical, and I wanna get the history in there because that's the most important
Yeah.
part. So that's really the history and then using the paranormal to try to connect with history. So it's like 80% history and then a little bit of paranormal.
Yeah. I get you. Well, I'll make sure like I'll get the links for everything from you, and then I'll just toss them in the description below the
Awesome.
video. But I want to say I appreciate you coming on, man. It
No,
was
I
a good,
appreciate you
good
for having
chat.
me, man, for real.
Yeah, no, this is a good chat, and I'll have to have you back on because I feel like we barely probably scratched the surface on a
Oh,
lot of things.
absolutely. Yeah, I'll be glad to come back.
Yeah, but for everybody listening, watching, whatever you're doing, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the stupid little bell, subscribe. Um, Make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review. Make sure you go check out Austin's stuff down below. Get the books, watch the documentaries, all that good stuff. Don't forget to ask questions and face your fears. Thanks for joining me and Austin on this episode of Induced Fear. Bye, guys.